Hi, I'm Lisa and this is my channel. I'll be telling different stories here, and if you're into that, let's get started.
The Harrison Mansion was built in the 1920s by the wealthy Harrison family, who became well known for their large textile factory in Salem. They were a respected family but always kept to themselves, which sparked rumors. In 1996, the entire family mysteriously vanished, leaving their home just as it was on that fateful day. No one ever discovered what happened to them, and the investigation yielded no results. Legends claim that strange sounds echoed from the house at night, and those who ventured near the estate reported seeing shadows or hearing voices that shouldn't exist. Others spoke of a curse that haunted anyone who set foot on the mansion's grounds. Over the years, locals dubbed it the Cursed Harrison House. While these stories were passed down through generations, the youth of Salem dismissed them as tales, yet they still hesitated to approach the house. However, there were always those drawn to danger. Among them was a group of friends: Jason Myers, Liam Henderson, Hannah Miller, and Mia Becker. Jason was the oldest in the group, 17 years old. He had always been the leader of their adventures, and this outing was no exception. Confident and fearless, he didn't believe in ghosts and thought it was all just scare tactics. Plus, he wanted to film their excursion with an old camcorder to show off later. Liam, his best friend, although a bit more timid, didn't want to appear weak in front of Jason. He always tried to keep up with his friend, even if it meant entering abandoned buildings or breaking the rules. Hannah and Mia were younger but always fascinated by mysticism and mysteries. They were intrigued by all things enigmatic, and the Harrison Mansion felt like a portal to the world of their favorite scary stories. Hannah, in particular, who had read numerous books about the supernatural, dreamed of finding something that would validate the rumors surrounding the house. The idea of sneaking into the Harrison Mansion took root one day after school when Jason noticed other students discussing creepy stories about the place. He decided to prove to everyone that there was nothing to fear. "It's just an abandoned house," he told his friends. Hannah and Mia immediately backed him up, seeing it as an opportunity to witness something supernatural firsthand. Liam hesitated but eventually agreed, not wanting to be left out. The next evening, as darkness fell, they gathered together, grabbed flashlights, and headed toward the house. Overgrown with trees and shrubs, it looked even creepier under the light of the full moon. Climbing over the rusty, half-collapsed fence was easy. Jason went first, and the others hesitantly followed. However, with each step, their unease grew. Mia glanced back for a second and thought she saw someone standing in the second-floor window, watching them. She didn't dare mention it to her friends, convincing herself it was just her imagination. As they approached the back door, Jason pushed it open and found that the lock had long been broken. Inside, the house looked as if the Harrisons had simply vanished in broad daylight. Old newspapers from 1996 lay scattered on the table. Dust settled on everything around, adding to the eerie atmosphere. They moved slowly and cautiously, glancing around every corner, hearing their own footsteps echo loudly in the silence. As soon as the door closed behind them, the outside world seemed to cut off, leaving them alone with darkness and a chilling sense of abandonment. The cold air inside felt heavy, suffocating their lungs as if it wanted to seep into every pore of their bodies. The flashlights illuminated only small portions of the living room, casting shadows that seemed to move along with them. Jason stepped forward first, glancing back at the others. He wanted to show that he was in control of the situation, even though deep inside, he could feel his heart racing faster. "Let's keep going, there's nothing to be afraid of," he said, masking his unease with a smile. Hannah scrutinized every corner of the room, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. She spotted an old bookshelf and approached it, cautiously brushing her fingers over the volumes coated in dust. Her gaze lingered on one book. It was open to the middle page. Why was it open? Did someone leave it like this? "Guys, look," Hannah whispered, pointing at the book. "It's open." "Probably just left that way by some previous visitors," Jason replied, not wanting to dwell on it, but he didn't like the look of the book. Mia, the quietest among them, glanced back at the door they had entered and suddenly felt as if someone or something was watching them. She grabbed Liam's arm. "I don't like this place. Shouldn't we go back?" "Relax, we just got here." Jason dismissed her concern, and Liam, although nervous himself, couldn't show his fear. He nodded in support. "Just watch, don't touch anything," Liam said quietly, though he too looked uneasy. His flashlight illuminated an old chair that had been slightly pushed aside. Perhaps it was just a feeling that something had moved here, but in the darkness, it transformed into a real fear. They wandered through the house, touching things that seemed frozen in time. On the kitchen table lay old newspapers dated 1996, as if time had stopped right then. Each new step caused barely audible creaks in the floor that merged with the house's silence, making each of them feel on the edge of a nervous breakdown. They were about to move to another room when suddenly Liam accidentally caught his foot on an old heavy rug that lay on the living room floor. The rug was thick and almost completely covered the floor, but when it shifted, the kids saw something unusual, a trapdoor underneath it. "Damn, is that a basement?" Liam said in surprise, looking at the others. "I thought everything had been explored here. Why didn't anyone mention a basement?" Jason immediately perked up, his face glowing with excitement over the new mystery. Maybe it was just overlooked. The rug was heavy, not everyone would have moved it, Hannah murmured, already forming theories in her head about the Harrison family and their disappearance. "We have to check it out." Jason couldn't hold back. He quickly grabbed the old trapdoor and started to open it. The trapdoor opened more easily than they expected. The stairs led down into darkness, and it became clear that there was indeed a basement below. Fear enveloped them, but curiosity outweighed it. "Let's go," Jason said firmly, pointing his flashlight down. Hannah didn't hesitate, Liam swallowed hard, and Mia silently lingered behind, trying to hide her anxiety. The basement is unlike the rest of the house. When they descended, they saw something that made them shudder. The basement looked nothing like the rest of the house. There was no dust, and the walls were clean, as if it had been tidied up recently. Modern computers stood on the tables, definitely not from the 90s, along with piles of documents neatly organized in folders. It felt as if someone had been working here just moments ago. "What the? This can't be the Harrisons," Mia whispered, her voice trembling with fear. Jason looked around, and his confidence began to wane. Hannah moved closer to one of the computers, pressed a button, and to her surprise, the screen lit up. "They're working? Who could have left this?" Her voice was a mix of excitement and fear. Liam nervously opened one of the folders and froze, staring at its contents. "What is this?" His voice trembled as he saw a series of photographs. They depicted themselves, the same 4 teenagers. The photos had been taken that very evening, just as they approached the house. "This can't be. How?" Mia looked around, as if trying to find answers among the shadows. At that moment, it became clear that they were not alone here. As they sifted through the documents, the tension in the basement was mounting. Liam, standing by the door, suddenly froze. His eyes widened, and his hand shot up in a gesture that made everyone stop. An eerie silence fell over the basement for a moment. "Shoo," Liam whispered, straining to listen. Jason, Mia, and Hannah also froze. At first, no one heard anything, only the rustling of their own breaths, which they struggled to keep quiet. But then there were footsteps. At first, they were barely audible, as if someone was slowly moving around upstairs. Gradually, the sounds grew clearer, like someone was inspecting the house, checking every corner. "We're not alone," Jason croaked. His voice trembled with a fear he could no longer hide. Liam listened again and suddenly realized with horror that the footsteps were anything but random. Someone definitely knew where they were and was heading straight for them. He quietly clicked off the flashlight, plunging them all into complete darkness. "What do we do?" Mia whispered in panic, pressing herself into the corner of the basement. Her breathing was loud, and she was desperately trying to calm herself. "Shoo." Hannah squeezed her hand and nodded towards Jason, trying to focus everyone's attention on him as their leader. Jason was breathing heavily, his thoughts racing, but he knew they had to act somehow. He leaned closer to his friends and whispered, "Let's wait. If he comes down, we need to bolt through the hatch. Don't make any sudden movements until we're sure he's coming down." The floorboards creaked again overhead. Someone was approaching the stairs leading to the basement. The sound of a door slightly creaking made each of them tense up even more. The footsteps were heavy and deliberate, as if this stranger wanted them to know he was getting closer. "Maybe it's just one of the neighbors," Hannah whispered, but her voice betrayed her doubt. Jason frowned. "Neighbors don't go creeping around old basements in the middle of the night, Hannah." The situation was getting worse. Hannah held her breath, her hand trembling in Jason's palm. She knew for certain that this was no random visitor. They all understood it. The footsteps stopped right above the hatch. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by a faint rustling. The man was slowly trying to lift the hatch. Now there was no doubt. They were trapped. The footsteps above the hatch quieted. The children froze, clutching each other. The hatch slowly opened, and an elderly man descended into the basement. His face was wrinkled, with heavy bags under his eyes, and his gray hair was sticking out in all directions. In his hands, he held a knife. His gaze was vacant yet somehow menacing. "Don't even think about running," he said softly, surveying each of them. "Otherwise, it'll hurt." Mia squeezed Jason's hand, feeling her whole body shake. Liam bit his lip hard, trying not to succumb to panic, while Hannah stared at Mackenzie, feeling a rising terror. "I'll keep my distance if you behave," he continued. "But if you don't," he dragged the knife across the table, leaving a deep scratch. He kept them locked in the basement for 3 days. No food, no chance of escape. The basement had no windows, and the doors were locked tight. Their chances of rescue seemed bleak. Mackenzie came down only a few times a day, bringing water, and then vanished again, leaving them in darkness. Every creak, every sound from above filled the kids with dread. "We can't just sit here," Jason whispered, trying to rally the others. "There has to be a way out. We just need to find it." They spent hours in silence, searching for any means of escape when Mackenzie wasn't around. Fatigue, hunger, and helplessness gradually overwhelmed them. "What do you think about this old man?" Hannah asked quietly, not taking her eyes off the door. "He's dangerous, that's for sure," Liam replied. "But I don't believe he'll let us go. If we don't do something, we'll be stuck here forever." On the 3rd day, as Mackenzie climbed back upstairs once again, Liam noticed a pipe in the corner of the basement. There was a visible crack on its edge, sharp enough to help. His hands, trembling from hunger, began to rub the ropes against the pipe. Feeling them weaken, he pushed even harder. "Hang on," Liam whispered. "The ropes are about to give." Eventually, he managed to loosen his hands. He quickly helped Jason, Mia, and Hannah free themselves. But the question remained, how would they escape the basement? "We need to find a way out," Jason said, scanning the room again. His gaze fell on some boxes stacked against the wall. Pushing them aside, they discovered a ventilation grate. "Look! This is our chance," Jason exclaimed. "But it's too narrow," Mia pointed out, leaning closer. "I don't think any of you can fit through." Liam tried first but quickly realized it was futile. The pipe was so tight that only Mia could squeeze through. "This is our only chance, Mia," Jason said. "You have to go. Get out of here and call for help." Mia nervously looked at the others. Her heart was racing, and she could feel sweat trickling down her back. "I can't leave you," she whispered, but Jason placed a hand on her shoulder. "You have to. It's our only way to escape." With great effort, Mia began to crawl through the ventilation grate, trying to be as quiet as possible. The rescue of all depended on her, and she knew it. The narrow space constricted her from all sides, and every movement felt like it could be her last. "You've got this," Jason whispered quietly, watching her gradually disappear into the darkness of the vent. Mia crawled into the ventilation system and began to climb up. The darkness around her grew denser, and every movement was accompanied by a faint creak of metal. She was almost at the exit when she saw through the grate that Mackenzie was returning to the basement. Her heart stopped. If he entered, he would immediately notice her absence. She could hear his heavy footsteps approaching, and fear washed over her like a cold wave. Fortunately, a phone ringing suddenly from his pocket saved her. Mackenzie, muttering something under his breath, stepped aside to talk, trying to focus on the call. Mia seized the opportunity and quickly pushed forward. A few minutes later, she finally managed to escape through the backyard of the house. Her heart raced as she ran to the nearest house and called the police. The police arrived quickly, surrounding the house. Officers got out of their cars, their faces serious and ready for any outcome. Mia, her voice trembling, pointed out where the basement was, almost on the verge of panic as she waited for them to burst inside. As the officers swiftly approached the entrance to the house, Mia stayed at a distance, but every movement she made was filled with anxiety. As soon as the police opened the basement door, a horrific atmosphere filled with the brutal experiences the children had endured enveloped them. Mackenzie, unaware of the impending danger, initially did not even realize what had happened. When the officers stormed into the basement, Mackenzie, sensing the threat, tried to escape but was quickly caught. His hands were cuffed, and he offered no resistance, realizing his criminal career was over. The officers checked the basement and finally freed the children who had remained captive. Watching it all unfold, the children felt a mix of relief and horror from what they had experienced. As they emerged from the basement, they were overcome by a wave of emotions. Alice, Jason, Liam, and Hannah, finally free yet still bewildered by what had happened, watched the police examine the crime scene. Parents, who had been difficult to keep at bay, finally arrived at the scene. When they saw their children, their faces filled with relief and joy. Desperate parents, unable to believe their kids were safe, rushed forward, hugging them and wiping away tears. The sound of their embraces and joyful cries filled the air. "I was so worried about you," Liam's mom cried, hugging him tightly. The children, feeling warmth and support, tried to explain what had happened, but words failed them as tears of joy streamed down their cheeks. After the incident, the police began an investigation and searched for possible accomplices of Mackenzie. It turned out that he hadn't acted alone, and law enforcement was prepared to uncover a whole network of criminals targeting teenagers. This incident became an important lesson for the children. They never wanted to venture into abandoned houses again. A new understanding and support emerged in their relationships with each other. The friends grew even closer, knowing they had endured horrors and trials together. This experience strengthened their bonds, reminding them of the importance of cherishing their loved ones and always being vigilant.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Drop a comment to let me know what you think of the story and what to like hear next. Bye bye!